What's happening in New York is larger than a normal housing slowdown. It is a financial chain reaction. Commercial real estate, residential housing, local tax revenues, and the banking system are all connected. When one piece weakens, pressure spreads throughout the entire structure. If office towers remain half empty and businesses continue shrinking their footprints, the effects will ripple through neighborhoods that once seemed untouchable. That is why New York enters this period with more risk than many people realize. Number 8. Illinois, the tax trap. Illinois has spent years trying to balance a budget weighed down by enormous long-term obligations, massive pension liabilities, population decline, and some of the highest property taxes in America have created a difficult environment for homeowners. For decades, many residents accepted those costs because home values continued to rise. But when appreciation slows, the financial burden becomes much harder to ignore. Families are beginning to ask a simple question: why pay premium taxes for a property that may no longer be gaining value? The foreclosure numbers suggest that pressure is already building. Delinquencies have started creeping upward while affordability continues to deteriorate. Meanwhile, many younger workers are leaving for neighboring states with lower costs of living. Cities like Indianapolis, Nashville, and Dallas have become magnets for people looking to escape Illinois' tax burden. Every family that leaves takes spending power and tax revenue with them. That creates a dangerous cycle. A shrinking tax base forces governments to rely even more heavily on those who remain. Higher costs push out even more residents. And eventually, the housing market begins to feel the strain. The danger for Illinois is not necessarily a dramatic overnight crash. It is a possibility of a long, grinding decline where prices stagnate, foreclosures rise, and population losses slowly weaken the market year after year. Number 7. Florida, the insurance crisis. Florida spent years as the hottest housing market in America. Retirees arrived by the thousands. Remote workers relocated from expensive northern cities. Investors flooded into Miami, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, and southwest Florida. For a while, it looked unstoppable. Then reality began to change. Insurance premiums exploded. Many homeowners watched their annual costs double or even triple. HOA fees climbed higher. Property taxes increased alongside soaring valuations. Mortgage rates remained elevated. Suddenly, owning a home in Florida became dramatically more expensive than many buyers expected. The foreclosure numbers are beginning to reflect that pressure. What makes Florida particularly vulnerable is that many recent buyers purchased near the top of the market. If prices weaken while ownership costs continue rising, equity can disappear surprisingly fast. Investors are also becoming more cautious. Vacation rental profits have cooled. Maintenance expenses are increasing. Storm risks continue growing. And lenders are paying closer attention to the long-term costs associated with coastal properties. Florida still attracts new residents, but the financial equation that powered its incredible housing boom is no longer as simple as it once was. Number 6. Nevada, built for growth. Nevada has always depended on growth. Population growth, tourism growth, construction growth, investment growth. When those forces work together, the state thrives. But when they slow down at the same time, the entire system becomes vulnerable. Las Vegas remains heavily tied to hospitality and entertainment. Those industries tend to weaken quickly during economic slowdowns. At the same time, thousands of homes and apartments built during the recent boom are still entering the market. That combination creates pressure from both sides. Demand softens. Supply continues growing. Foreclosure activity has already started moving higher, while investors who purchase expecting endless appreciation are discovering that markets do not always move upward. Nevada remembers what happened during the housing collapse of 2008. That experience still shapes how many people view the state today. While conditions are different, the rapid increase in inventory and weakening affordability are creating uncomfortable comparisons. Number 5. Georgia, growth meet reality. Georgia became one of the biggest winners of the migration boom. Atlanta attracted businesses, technology companies, logistics firms, and remote workers. Developers responded with an enormous construction wave. Entire communities appeared almost overnight. For years, it worked. Population growth absorbed new housing. Prices climbed steadily. Confidence remained high. But confidence alone cannot support a market forever. As borrowing costs increased and affordability weakened, demand started slowing. At the same moment, many projects that began during the boom finally reached completion. The result is a growing inventory of homes competing for fewer buyers. Foreclosures are beginning to edge upward, particularly among households stretched by higher monthly payments and rising living costs. Georgia's economy remains strong, but strength does not make a market immune to correction. History shows that places experiencing the fastest growth often experience the sharpest reversals when conditions change. Number 4, Colorado, the affordability wall. Colorado spent years becoming one of America's most desirable places to live. The mountains, the outdoor lifestyle, a growing technology sector, strong wages, all of it attracted newcomers. Unfortunately, prices rose much faster than incomes. Homes that once seemed affordable became increasingly out of reach for average families. Today, buyers face a very different reality. Higher interest rates have dramatically increased monthly payments. Insurance costs are rising, property taxes have climbed, and many first-time buyers simply cannot qualify. That leaves sellers waiting longer. Inventory grows. Price reductions become more common. Foreclosure activity has not exploded, but the ingredients for future stress are becoming easier to see. Colorado's biggest challenge is that expectations remain anchored to the extraordinary gains of the last decade. Markets rarely move in straight line forever. Number 3, California, the cost of success. California remains one of the largest and most influential housing markets in the world. But success comes with price. Housing costs are among the highest in America. Insurance expenses are rising rapidly. Utility costs continue climbing. Taxes remain significant. For many families, the total cost of ownership has reached unsustainable levels. Population growth has slowed considerably. Some regions are even experiencing net outmigration. When fewer buyers enter the market while affordability continues deteriorating, prices naturally come under pressure. California is not facing one single crisis. It is dealing with multiple smaller pressures all arriving at the same time. Commercial real estate uncertainty, technology sector layoffs, insurance challenges, affordability constraints, and slowing demographic growth. Together, they create conditions that deserve close attention. Number 2, Ohio, the manufacturing risk. Ohio often receives less attention than coastal markets, but that can make its warning signs easier to overlook. The state's economy remains closely connected to manufacturing, logistics, and industrial production. Those sectors tend to weaken early during recessions. When factories slow down, household incomes suffer. When incomes weaken, mortgage payments become harder to maintain. Foreclosure rates can rise surprisingly quickly. Many Ohio communities also face aging populations and slower long-term growth. That means there are fewer new buyers entering the market to absorb additional inventory. A recession could expose vulnerabilities that have remained hidden during stronger years. Number 1, Delaware, America's highest foreclosure pressure. At the very top of the list sits a state many people would never expect. Delaware. On the surface, it appears relatively stable. Its small size often keeps it out of national headlines. But the latest foreclosure figures paint a very different picture. Delaware has emerged with one of the highest foreclosure rates in the country, recording approximately one filing for every 739 housing units. That number alone should command attention. Small states can sometimes experience dramatic shifts because relatively modest increases in distressed properties have an outsized effect on the overall market. If home prices soften while foreclosure activity continues rising, distressed sales can quickly begin pushing comparable values lower. That process creates a feedback loop. Lower prices reduce homeowner equity. Reduced equity increases financial stress. Additional foreclosures add even more inventory, and the cycle repeats. The broader lesson extends far beyond these 13 states. Housing markets rarely collapse without warning. The signs usually appear months or even years in advance. Rising foreclosure activity, weakening prices, longer selling times, growing inventory, falling buyer confidence. Individually, each signal may seem manageable. Together, they often tell a much bigger story. The question facing homeowners and investors is not whether conditions are changing. The evidence suggests they already are. The real question is how prepared people will be if those early warning signs continue to spread across the country. The three forces driving the crisis. At first glance, these 13 states seem completely different from one another. Oregon depends heavily on technology. Arizona grew through migration. Connecticut struggles with demographics. Florida relies on retirees and tourism. Ohio depends on manufacturing. New York is tied to finance and commercial real estate. But beneath the surface, they are all facing the same three pressures at exactly the same time. The first is the cost of borrowing. For more than a decade, Americans became used to historically low interest rates. Cheap money changed everything. Families could afford larger homes. Investors could leverage multiple properties. Developers could finance enormous apartment projects with relatively little risk. As long as rates stayed low, the system worked. But once borrowing costs climbed, the entire equation changed. A home that once carried a comfortable monthly payment suddenly became far more expensive. Many buyers stepped back. Others simply could not qualify. Demand weakened almost overnight. The second force is oversupply. During the housing boom, builders assumed migration and population growth would continue forever. Entire subdivisions were planned around that belief. Luxury apartment towers broke ground across nearly every major city. Developers expected endless demand. Instead, many of those projects are reaching completion at exactly the moment buyers and renters are becoming more cautious. The result is simple economics. More supply, less demand, falling prices. The third force is household exhaustion. Inflation has affected nearly every part of daily life. Groceries cost more. Insurance costs more. Utilities cost more. Car payments cost more. Healthcare costs more. Families that could comfortably afford their mortgages a few years ago now find themselves under pressure from every direction. Even homeowners with fixed mortgage payments are discovering that ownership itself has become dramatically more expensive. Property taxes have increased. Maintenance costs have surged. Homeowners' insurance premiums have climbed sharply. For many households, there is simply very little room left in the budget. Why foreclosures matter. Many people assume foreclosures only affect those who lose their homes. That is not how housing markets work. A single foreclosure can influence an entire neighborhood. When a distressed property sells below market value, it becomes a new comparable sale. Appraisers use those sales when determining the value of nearby homes. Banks use those appraisals when approving mortgages. Potential buyers use those prices to negotiate lower offers. As foreclosure inventory grows, prices can begin falling faster than expected. That creates another problem. Negative equity. A homeowner who owes more than the property is worth often loses flexibility. Selling becomes difficult. Refinancing may become impossible. Unexpected expenses become much harder to manage. If job losses begin rising during a recession, negative equity can turn a manageable situation into a financial emergency. That is exactly why economists watch foreclosure numbers so closely.